So we have on the continuum, so we have, over here we have the monopolies, and then all the way over on the other side is the PC, the perfect competition, and then we have, in here is the oligopoly, and then here is the monopolistic competition. Okay, so
Yep, you got it.
Okay. That's weird. So the characteristics of the monopolistic competitors is that they have the products are virtually identical, but they try to differentiate their products, and the primary ingredient there is advertising. The budget that these folks spend on their advertising can be 20–30%. Good example would be Coke versus Pepsi. Really the same product. I mean, and I know everybody thinks, and me too, is that somehow there's this huge difference between Coke and Pepsi. But the truth is that they're very, very similar, and we buy into the crap about how one is superior to the other, and that's all driven by advertising, And the same can be said for the quarter pounders with cheese and versus the Whopper, We all have a preference, and we all feel strong. I mean, but a lot of us feel strongly about it. But the truth is that the degrees of difference between these two products is negligible in very similar products. And one has a clown and one has a king. You know what I'm saying? All right, so the advertising is the key ingredient there. Then over here, the oligopolists are few producers, have pretty much a homogeneous product, and they could act like monopolies if they trusted each other, but unfortunately the prisoner's dilemma, the dominant strategy, says that it's never going to work out. And the thing about the Nash equilibrium that we did in class is that there's this incentive to cheat, and no matter how good your intentions are, you notice that you're controlling the price by virtue of working with these other countries or companies or whatever, and then by virtue of being able to control the price, and we increase our output a little bit, we'll make a ton of money, and we'll sacrifice the other company to do it. The other company says, well, poop on you guys, and they increase their output, and then they get put into that dominant position where you can't go back. So they're producing more than that MRMC intersect, and they can't reverse it. Does that sound kind of familiar?
What was that called again? The prisoner or something?
The what?
What was that theory? That prisoner?
A prisoner's dilemma.
Prisoner's dilemma.
Yeah. Let me show you just a couple more little things about that. I mean, it's kind of interesting, and there's a lot of when you get into the university level. I mean, there's whole classes that'll be dedicated to this, and it's interesting. I mean, let me show you. I'll just pick a couple of examples. So here's that situation where that Nash equilibrium where, and I mean, you can see this for yourself, but basically you have these two bank robbers, Bonnie and Clyde. They get arrested, put into separate rooms, and then they have to make a decision. So, and you don't know what the other person's going to do. And so, based on this, what's the dominant strategy? If you're Bonnie, what's the only choice you have? See what you think.
I don't think you have an only choice.
Well, you can either confess to the crime or you can say I didn't do it. Now, and then, so maybe I should explain this a little bit more. So, let's say in Bonnie's, if Bonnie confesses and then Clyde confesses, you both get separately, but independently, you get 8 years each. If Bonnie says I didn't do it or denies it, and then Clyde confesses, he goes free and Bonnie gets 20 years. If they both remain silent, then they both can get 1 year. Now again, assume that you're Bonnie. You have no control over what Clyde says, right? You have no way to know what he's going to say, and you have no influence. What's the only choice you have?
You're paranoid, you confess.
let me ask that a different. I mean, you're right, but let me ask it a different way. What's to prevent you from going to prison? The worst thing that could happen is you could end up going for 20 years, right? That's the worst thing that could happen.
That's if you remain silent. But
Yeah.
if you confess, you're only going to get 8 years.
Yeah. So what exactly? Say that again.
If you confess, you're only going to get 8 years regardless of whether or not he confesses or not.
Right. And,
So-
if you get lucky, then
he stays silent.
yeah, and then you go free,
Yeah.
right? But you can't depend on what the other person says. So you only have one choice, and that is in this case to confess. Let me give you another example. Iraq and Iran. Let me see. This one's real easy. All right, and so the United States and the USSR. I think it was. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. And so you have choices. I mean, this is very applicable to what's going on in Gaza right now. I mean, this is what's happening, and they don't trust each other, and they're stuck because they have no choice but to arm themselves. Because no matter what, if the Israelis say, okay, we're going to go for this peaceful mission, and the other side doesn't go along with it, then Israel is going to be sunk. So they have no choice, Anyway, that's kind of what that's all about. Does that help a little bit? And there's whole classes dedicated to that, and it's not super important for us, but that's what that Nash equilibrium is all about. Good? All right. Any questions about that stuff? Let's see. And then we have everybody kind of clear on the characteristics of these. That's good quiz stuff. Good exam stuff too, actually. So be ready for that. And that leads us to the markets for the factors of production. Easy little quick chapter. Okay. Markets for the factors of production. This is about labor. And it's about why Kobe Bryant makes $80 million a year and I make $30,000. That's what it's all about. It has to do with your contribution of labor. Okay, so let me ask you a couple of questions to get started. Why does an airline pilot make more money than a bus driver?
More schooling. More schooling.
So, more education for the pilot, yeah? Okay, so more education, yeah?
So, you have to be more specialized?
You have to be, and what do you mean by that? I mean, I agree, but what do you mean?
Not everybody can fly a plane, but, a lot more people can drive a bus.
Okay, so you don't have to be as skilled maybe to drive a bus as you do to fly a plane?
I was just going to say safety.
Safety, explain what you mean.
If you crash with a bus, you're pretty safe compared to if you're in a plane going down.
Yeah, no such thing as a fender bender at 60,000 feet.
You're more responsible for a larger amount of money. I mean, if you're flying a 747, that's going to cost a lot more money to replace.
The capital cost is a lot higher for a plane, so they better have more specialized pilots. Yeah, that's a good point.
Can you ask that question again? I might have got it backwards.
Why does an airline pilot make more than a school bus driver?
Why doesn't or does?
Does. Airline pilot makes a lot more than a school bus driver.
There's more contributing factors, like people pay $700 for a plane ticket as opposed to $150 for a bus ticket.
There you go. And that's key. Go ahead.
And just because of the safety issue, a lot more people are willing to drive a bus as opposed to being a pilot. A lot of people don't want that kind of stress on them.
Yeah,
There's
no doubt.
a lot less people
I agree with
willing
that.
to do the job.
Okay. Yeah.
It's how do you want? It's more of a high risk job.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. I think. Yeah. So there's all these various combinations of things that, but Sarah kind of went around it. You kind of got the right idea. But why is it for a lot of intents and purposes, the job is really pretty similar, is it not? I mean, think
Fairly
about
similar.
it.
You're
It's
driving
about
a
getting in
transportation.
and driving a vehicle, flying a vehicle that takes people from point A to point B, or bombs, I guess, if you're in a school bus bomb. That sounded terrible. but so really it's kind of similar, yeah? I mean, it's about transporting people. I saw a hand over here. No? Okay. So again, why then does the airline pilot, I don't know the numbers, let's say he or she makes $100 grand, the school bus driver makes 20 grand. Why the big difference?
I just wanted to point out that I went online and saw like the 10 most dangerous jobs. They say that airlines isn't dangerous. It is. It's like number 7.
Flying a plane for a living is, that's surprising to me.
What's funny is you're probably more likely to get into a bus accident than you are in a plane
I was
accident.
gonna say, I've heard about a lot of our bus
Well, the thing is, when you crash a plane,
Everybody dies, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean,
The
that's
fatality
true, but,
ratio.
which is, I mean, I agree with you, but think about it. If you're driving a school bus full of kindergartners, I mean, you know.
Yeah, but if you're driving a bus, your chances are more likely of surviving than if you're driving a plane.
Yeah,
30,000 feet in the air, you're not exactly
Like, you
gonna.
pretty much guaranteed you're not.
That's why they don't put airbags in planes.
Airbags in planes. I wrecked my F-18, my airbag deployed.
There's,
I don't want to die in my sleep. I want to die in my sleep like my uncle did, not screaming and burning like his passengers.
Go ahead.
I would think because of the way society and economics are, it has nothing to do with safety hazards. It probably has to do with what she said earlier, money.
Yeah.
And school bus is paid by the school district, which is paid by state taxes.
Yeah.
Airlines are paid by people.
There you go.
That's it.
There you go.
there's more revenue.
Yeah, it really doesn't. And you sort of alluded to it, and I think you sort of sealed the deal, is that it's all about the revenue that these people can generate for their institutions. That's what it's all about. And just like me, and just like you, and just like everybody else in the world, you get paid consummate with the value that you bring to the firm. And I get paid, I get paid $30,000. Is it because I'm a wonderful guy? Nope. Is it because, I have some special talent? But what it is that I get paid consummate with my ability to bring students to the classroom.
Isn't it based on a budget too?
Well, sure, but see, the salary. Let me back off of that a little bit. Is that when they're thinking about, the powers that be are thinking about hiring a new instructor, the pay isn't. It's not a magic trick. It has to do with the value added that you can bring to the class. It's that simple, and that's why those. Forgive my French, but those assholes that are the CEOs of these failing companies that are getting paid $300 million a year, why do they get paid so much? Because they drive that kind of revenue. They bring that into the firm. Yeah.
Well, plane tickets might be more expensive than the bus ticket, but it's just more of an efficient service.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And so the plane, I have no idea, but let's say a loaded plane going from San Francisco to Chicago. If you think about it, there's probably several million in capital costs there, in the plane and all that
insurance.
There's all the training that goes into the pilot, which is probably a former military person. I'm guessing that, but they have probably 10 years of training. If I wanted to be a bus driver, I could probably go down and get my license and within 4 weeks probably be driving a school bus. I mean, I don't mean to disrespect him. I know there's very good school bus drivers up there, but
There's a lot more technicality involved in flying a plane.
yeah, right. But if I wanted to fly a plane, I wanted to become a professional pilot, it would probably take years, if not, literally, 6 years to even become eligible to do it, Go ahead.
It kind of, I think what you're kind of referring to, like the way that the president only makes, I don't know how much he makes.
I think it's 250.
Yeah, say 200 and something. But then you've got these NBA players or these football players that are signing 2-year, multi-million-dollar contracts because when they play, they bring people to the stadium.
Right.
People watch on TV. People are buying stuff.
Let's talk about that. Kobe Bryant, and I know this from just doing this last year. Kobe Bryant makes $50 million a year. Is he worth it?
To the NBA, yeah.
Well, is he worth it to the Lakers? Is he worth it to me and you?
Yeah. If he wasn't worth it to the Lakers, they wouldn't be paying him that.
Right.
But he brings in all the people that are buying tickets, all the
Exactly. So
merchandise.
Kobe Bryant makes what he brings in. He's just getting getting paid what kind of revenue he generates for the Lakers. It's that simple.
But personally, he's not.
Well,
Well, see, that's why they have like they
that's
had that hockey
you know,
strike.
I'm sorry.
They had that hockey strike several years ago because the hockey players were like, "We're not making the money that you guys are bringing in."
Right, and,
You know,
and
we're
there's
not
some
seeing
fat
that.
cat at the top that's getting all of the revenue that I'm generating.
Yeah.
They're not coming to see this guy,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, you're right. Okay, so there's the labor. How about why is it that I just got to go through a couple more examples to make sure we cover everything? Why is it that beef costs more than chicken?
More people prefer beef over chicken.
It's what's for dinner.
It's cheaper ways.
There is more marketing though, like
It's okay. So somebody up front said it's easier to process a chicken than it is to process beef.
Less land, less.
What else? I mean, why
Well,
else
more-
is chicken less
You
expensive
don't
than
have to
beef?
feed them as much, or like, you know what I mean?
Mhm. So that
You can feed them like as much food as it would take to feed like 10 cows. You could feed like
yeah, right. So to raise a chicken takes a handful of seed and I don't know what it
Beef
takes,
tends
but-
to be a little bit more prestigious than chicken. You know, you go to a
Beef
five-star
is-
prestigious.
Oh, okay.
You go to a five-star restaurant, you're not going to order a New York chicken breast.
A fillet
You know?
chicken.
Yeah, filet. But yeah, exactly. You know, you want to go and you get like your Kobe beef, or you get your New York, or
You
you
get your
your
Kobe beef. Your
Kobe
beef.
beef. There we go.
Okay. What else? I mean, there's some more. Think about what goes in. I think one of your colleagues has pretty much nailed it. But why else is
Cost.
chicken less expensive than beef?
Cost.
it takes a lot longer to like produce beef to the
Okay.
point where you need it. Like to get a steak, it takes like a lot more for the cow
Couple
to
years.
actually grow. To
Yeah,
produce that meat.
years,
And if you
right?
have a chicken, you can like force feed it or do all the bad stuff that factories do to
I
it. in,
know.
like, a week.
Yeah.
Grow a chicken in like a week if you wanted to, but a cow
Yeah, no, it's true.
takes a lot
It's
more
true.
time to produce
Okay.
a steak.
All you do is couple
Go
of
ahead.
hormones.
I figure if chicken and beef are the same price, not many people would buy chicken. They'd be-
I don't know about that. I mean, I given the choice, I'd say, half the time I'll go for chicken, given the choice.
Even if the price was the same.
Yeah,
maybe ours-
yeah. I mean, like if you ever go to a wedding, you get the beef or the chicken. I'll pick chicken just as often.
I think that there's more like marketing campaigns and stuff for beef than there are chicken.
Okay, so beef has just a better. It's more of a this than a this somehow. Could be. And I'm not a farmer at all, so forgive me. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking, like, isn't there like a religion that doesn't eat beef? So wouldn't there be more people?
Yeah, that could be. I think you're talking about the.
Hindu, don't eat cow.
What is it?
Hindu, don't eat cow.
Oh, maybe Hindu. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, so maybe that has something to do with it. Well, see, from my perspective, when you raise chickens, here's how I see it: is that you go down to the little place down here on 299, and you get a box of 50 chicks, right? Is that right? Okay, and you pay $10 for it, and you go home and you put your little chicks in a little pen. And as they get bigger, which isn't very long, but then what as far as I know, you take the hens and they go into the cage to produce eggs, and you take the roosters and they just go outside, and they get sort of eaten by coyotes and run over, and and eventually you're down to 2 or 3 roosters that are there to propagate your chicken family, right? But so for all intents and purposes, male chickens are kind of disposable, right?
You only need one for every like 10,
Right, and
12
be
hens.
safe, have 2 or 3, but then they fight, da 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 da. On the other hand, though, if you raise a cow, you're not. Well, he's a male. We'll just let him wander around. It doesn't work that way. Okay, and so the time that goes into raising a cow is, I think somebody said years. I don't know, but I'm sure it's at least that.
Significantly more than a chicken.
Yeah, right. And chickens, what? Maybe 3 months, maybe.
Oh, no, it's just.
Oh, you go ahead.
Difference in
No, he's gonna say something. I was just saying,
something funny.
aren't there a lot of other like uses for cows too?
Yeah,
So
like
that-
dairy products.
Okay, yeah, good point. So
Leather.
cows have, obviously the leather,
Rodeo.
dairy products. products and lots of things for sure.
Another thing.
Okay, so is it possible that the cost of a steak is related to the contribution of the cow?
Yeah, could be.
We'll get into that in more detail in a second. Yeah.
Actually, somebody else just brought up, like all the other things you can do with a cow, like dairy, all that kind of stuff. Is it possible that you're also paying for the trade-off? Because like you can keep getting milk from a cow, you can keep making cheese from it too.
Oh, that's a good, as opposed to, you could argue, chickens can produce eggs, excuse me, but yeah, I agree with Paul.
But nobody saves the feathers.
Yeah, but chicken, it's like they're gonna keep producing eggs, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like getting rid of like a good cow is like significantly
More
than
investment.
getting rid of a breed.
Yeah, right. And you're right about, I have a friend who's got a few chickens, and it's like, every other day, it's like, here's another 24 eggs. It's like, I couldn't eat that many eggs in my life.
Another thing too, like majority of the people, like you can have a chicken or some chickens in your backyard and you can raise them and produce it yourself. But it's not as possible to have a cow in your backyard.
Right. So yeah, you live in Metro Reading.
This is my
in
cow
your
friend.
condo and your pet cow.
Get a big back patio.
Yeah, my cow. You wake up the cow. Okay. One last one. Why is land cheaper in Wisconsin than it is in Manhattan?
Because nobody wants to live there.
Because there's so much more of it. Because Wisconsin's too
The
cold.
demand for it isn't as high.
The demand isn't as high.
It's more of a rural area, so there's not as many businesses and employment opportunities.
There you go. And so you're exactly right. So think about that. If I buy a quarter acre in Wisconsin, what am I going to do with it?
Farm.
What am I going to farm? Chickens.
Hey, cow.
Okay, so I've got a quarter acre in Wisconsin, and I can do pretty much one thing. Maybe two, but okay, one thing. I can farm. How much revenue is it going to generate?
On a quarter acre?
On a quarter acre, how much revenue is it going to generate?
Not a whole lot.
I've got a quarter acre of wheat.
Not that much.
I get to harvest it twice a year. One bale of hay twice a year. Revenue city, man. All right, yeah, $12 every year. $12 of revenue. Now in Manhattan, though, if I get a quarter acre, what can I do with that?
Build a house or a condo on it. You're set for life.
I could open a Starbucks and probably make $1 million a day. You know what I'm saying? I could build an apartment and rent it out for $3,000 a month.
More
you know
than
what I'm
that.
saying? So there's these. It's the value of the product of, in this case, of land, that drives the cost. It's the value of the product of labor. You know why I get paid 30 and Kobe gets paid 80 million. It's the value of the product of capital in a chicken versus a cow. It's how much investment goes in and then how much money I can get back out. Right? That's what drives the price. It's simple. All right? Everybody okay with that? All right, so now where does that come from? And we're going to talk about it now. Can you tell me what time that is?
20 after 10.
Okay, thank you. Okay, factors of production, you know those, land, labor, capital. You get derived demand, and this is on the exam. Derived demand is a demand you get from producing something. I'll explain that in a second. When you, let's say, make cars, right? So we've got an auto manufacturing place. I have a derived demand in my manufacturing process. I have a derived demand for labor. I need people to work on the assembly line. I have a derived demand for capital in you know, the belts and conveyors and all that stuff. I have a derived demand for land in that I need a couple of acres to build a building to put my factory on. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
Can you say the definition for derived demand?
Yeah.
Derived demand is a demand, as a producer, is a demand that you get when you want to make something. So let me say that again. If I want to make cars, I'll have a derived demand for auto laborers. Does that make sense?
You're saying like depending on what you're doing, you know what you'll need.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Things you
so
need
as
to
a,
complete
like,
the task.
what's that?
The things you need to complete the task.
Yeah, basically. And I have, and the factors of production are land, labor, capital, right, which we've already talked about. And then if I want to make cars, I'm going to have a derived demand for automobile workers. Now I'm going to have a derived demand for, you know, the capital goods, a conveyor belt. Make sense? And that's on the exam. And this is all repeat stuff. So
The exam or the quiz or both?
it'll be on, this question will be an ABC question on the exam. And on the quiz, hang on 1 second, I'll show you what it'll look like.
So you said the drive demand, like if you're want to make cars, it's going to be like your automakers, like your factory workers, and your conveyor belt. And
Exactly.
Stuff like
Yeah. So you have as like Ford or GM, whoever, they have a derived demand for workers, for conveyor belts, for
So it's what they need to
land.
produce what they want to make.
Right. Yeah. You got it. Sweet. Okay. Good. So labor market, and so now we're going to talk. We'll start with labor. We talk about capital and land and later on in this presentation, but we'll start with this. So the demand for labor is just like the demand for anything else, like ice cream or anything. You have there's a demand curve for labor. There's a wage and there's a quantity of workers. I'll show you what that looks like in a second. So for labor, you have a demand curve just like anything else. So here's a derived demand for apples. Good? A little bit. I'm gonna get it running around up here. Get a little bit more.
You are wearing a cardigan.
Cardigan. Oh, what? Cardigan. I haven't heard that in a long time. Pull over. No, it's a cardigan. Look at the cardigan. From Dumb and Dumber. One of the greatest movies of all time.
Oh crap, my battery's going.
Did you know, I read that they're doing Jim Carrey and, what's his name? Harry. What's his name? Jeff Daniels. They're doing a part 2 now. A real part 2. Not that stupid, dumber, not that. They're doing a real part 2.
They canceled it.
What's that?
They canceled it.
They did?
Yeah.
Jim Carrey back then? That's...
Because he thought they would like ruin it.
Yeah. It's like the greatest movie ever. Okay, so here's and understanding the axes there is pretty important. So you have, like, here's the apples. This is, I think it's apples. Yeah, so you have, here's the supply and demand curve for apples. Right, and you have, obviously, your supply, your demand. You have the price of apples here, and then the quantity of apples here. Okay, so just like any other market. Based on that, then you have a derived demand for laborers, in this case, okay? And so you have, on the x-axis, you have the wage, and then down here you have the number of workers. All right, make sense? So there's the market for apples, and then here's the derived demand for apple workers, pickers, or whatever. Make sense? Okay, want to get through one more thing and we'll get out of here.
What is the L?
Labor,
Okay.
that one? Yeah. Quantity of workers. I kind of jump in the gun, but notice that the price of apples related to the wage. Kind of jump in the gun. I'll tie that together more or next class. Good? Okay, couple of things just to get the definitions done is that most labor is a contribution. It's not usually the final product. There are some for sure, but generally labor is just a contribution along an assembly line. By and large, I mean, you could argue like a barber or a what's the female version of that, or not female?
Beautician.
Beautician, right? That's the final product. So that there's this contribution of labor, and that the haircut is actually the final product. But I would say, I don't know, I don't really have a statistic, but 9 out of 10, whatever, something like that. Generally, contributions of labor are just along an assembly line. I mean, in like this class, you could argue, well, there's an end sum here. You'll get your grade at the end of the semester, class over. But really, it's a much, this is just a very small part of a much bigger process in getting your degree and eventually getting a job and eventually being happy. All right, and then the production function, which you guys already know.
Every time you say that, I think of conjunction junction, and I hear it in my head.
That little,
Production junction.
yeah, that little
yeah.
dollar bill. And,
Yeah.
PBS, was that right?
No,
Schoolhouse
Channel
Rock,
That's right.
Channel 9.
That's right. That might be, I think maybe, I would say probably 7 out of the 10 students in here probably have no clue what that is.
Yeah. I actually found like a compilation, like 30 years of Schoolhouse Rock DVD at Goodwill. My son loves watching it. It makes me so happy.
You know this, just make a quick note of it for the graph that I'm gonna, or the chart I'm going to show you. So the production function is the relationship between input and output. So, remember that curve and the tennis ball thing? So the production function is that as you add input, you get increased output but at a decreasing rate due to diminishing marginal product. And that plays a role in a minute. Let me get to the table here. So the elements that are important as of right now is that most labor services or most labor is part of a much bigger picture. It's not usually the final product. And then the second thing is a production function is that relationship between input and output. So if you increase your workers, you'll get more output, but at an increasing but slowing rate. Remember that? That being said, how many workers do we hire?
That depends on the price, right?
What's the price of a worker? What's it called? The wage. So how many workers we hire is dependent on the wage. What's the wage dependent on?
The price of the product.
Close. What is it? Covey makes $80 million a year. Why?
Because of the value that he brings.
Because of the marginal product of his labor is worth $80 million. So if I'm working on an apple farm, how many workers do I hire? Well, I keep hiring until the last worker I hire just pays for themselves. Right? And now remember, as I add more workers, I get increased output but at a decreasing rate. So I add a worker, I get more output. Add another worker, get more output. The wage is constant. It's $10 an hour, $10 an hour, $10 an hour. First worker is contributing $50 worth of apples. Second worker is contributing another 40, another 30, another 20. The fifth worker is contributing another $10 worth of apples. That's paying for his or her wage and I've hired the right number of people. That make sense? All right, so here's what that looks like. Sorry, I should have blown this up. I don't know why I didn't do that. Okay, so this is what I just said. All right, so we have apples, I think. Is it apples? Yeah, bushel. Okay. So 0 workers, 0 output. No problem here. Okay, so I hire 1 worker. They produce 100 bushels. The marginal product is of that first worker. That contribution of the first worker is 100. The value of the marginal product of labor, $1,000. So what does that say about each bushel? How much does each bushel cost? So they contribute 100 bushels. It's worth $1,000. How much is each bushel?
$10.
$10, right? So they contribute $1,000 worth of marginal product. Their wage is $500 a week, and me as the entrepreneur, I'm taking away $500. Should I hire another worker?
Yeah.
Of course, because the value of that worker is exceeding what I'm paying. Right? So next day or next season, wherever I hire a second worker. Pressure! No, not me! Too late in class. Alright,
dismissed.
Yeah. Okay, so the second worker contributes another 80 bushels. So there's the marginal product of the second worker at $10 a bushel, so they're contributing $800. I pay them $500, and then as an entrepreneur, I get an additional $300 in profit. All right, next day or next season, whatever, I hire a third worker. Contribution of that worker is an additional 60, totals 240. $600, I pay him $500, I'm getting another $100. Should I hire the fourth worker?
No.
Why not?
Because then you're losing money.
How? She said no because then you're losing money. Tell me how.
Well,
why?
If you hire the third person or the fourth person, you're only making $400 and you're paying them $500. So you're losing. You're actually paying more out than you are earning.
Okay, so the contribution of the fourth worker is how much?
$400.
40 bushels. The value is $400.
Yeah.
What's their wage?
$500.
So I'm losing $100 by hiring that fourth worker.
Can't
Would
you
I
just
hire
put
a
people
fourth
at
worker-
part-time?
I'm sorry?
Can't you just put people at part-time?
Sure. Would I hire a fourth worker part-time?
Maybe you could.
Probably.
Half-time, because then it'd bring you up just straight up to 0, wouldn't it?
Right, and you want to keep increasing your inputs until the value of the marginal product of the last input is equal to the revenue that it generates. Then you've maximized your Q. You've maximized your output, and that's all you have control over. Remember? We'll pick it up there on Tuesday. Have a good week.